6,569 tons of sulfur dioxide. All from one day, from one volcano. That number broke a 15-year record, and the scientists who saw it knew exactly what it meant. The last time Mayon Volcano released readings like this, it was the warning before catastrophe. The same gas, the same patterns, the same buildup that buried entire towns. For 59 days straight, the Philippines' most dangerous volcano has been bleeding lava onto its slopes. And the numbers coming out of Mayon this week aren't just alarming, they're rewriting what scientists thought they understood about this eruption. 24 million cubic meters of molten rock now sit piled on Mayon's flanks. More than 1,600 pyroclastic density currents. Superheated avalanches that move faster than any car can drive. That's enough volcanic material to bury a mid-sized city under 10 feet of debris. The lava flows have stretched nearly 4 kilometers down the eastern slopes. And here's what has volcanologists watching their instruments with growing dread. The mountain isn't slowing down, it's adapting. And the magma supply feeding this eruption, it's been patiently building. 400,000 people live within 20 kilometers of this crater. They've watched Mayon erupt their entire lives. In 1814, it buried a town under 9 meters of ash. In 1993, it sent pyroclastic flows so fast that 77 farmers never had time to run. In 2006, it killed over 1,200 people. And the volcano wasn't even erupting. Right now, tonight, Mayon's summit glows red against the Philippine darkness. The perfect cone that tourists fly across the world to photograph is pumping poison into the atmosphere at rates nobody alive has ever measured. The rainy season is 3 months away, and everything the volcano has been depositing on those slopes is waiting for the first monsoon. Doreen Abalinde, officer in charge at the Mayon Volcano Observatory, put it bluntly during a briefing this month. The volcano's morphology has changed. The old hazard maps are obsolete, and the flows are no longer following the rules. Because after 59 days, one thing is clear. This eruption isn't following the patterns anyone expected. And whatever happens next can be totally unpredictable. But to understand what's going on better, let's start by breaking down what we know. Here's what 59 days of continuous eruption looks like in raw data. On January 8th, there was 195 tons of sulfur dioxide released per day. On February 4th, 6,569 tons per day. Let that sink in. That's not a gradual increase. That's a 33-fold explosion in volcanic output over less than a month. Sulfur dioxide emissions peaked at nearly 7,000 tons per day in early February. That reading didn't just break records, it more than doubled the January average of 2,571 tons per day. To put that in perspective, the 2023 eruption that kept Mount Mayon at alert level 3 for 6 months never produced sulfur dioxide readings anywhere close to these levels. Dr. Maria Antonia Bornaz, chief of volcano monitoring at PHIVOLCS, explained the critical difference during a February briefing. The 2023 activity involved surface lava extrusion without significant deep magma supply. What's happening now is fundamentally different. Fresh molten rock is surging up from deep reservoirs, and the supply shows no sign of exhaustion. The lava flows tell the same story. 3 main channels carry molten rock down Mayon slopes. Basud Gully on the eastern flank at 3.8 kilometers, Bonga Gully on the southeast at 2.6 kilometers, and Mi Isi Gully on the south at 1.3 kilometers. These flows advance daily, fed by continuous effusion from the summit crater. But here's where it gets concerning. The flows aren't just advancing, they're building unstable masses of partially solidified lava called lava flow units. These formations have solid outer crusts, but remain superheated inside. When water infiltrates these structures, whether from rain or groundwater, the result is violent secondary explosions that hurl rocks and ash without warning. Scientists have a term for what sulfur dioxide reveals about a volcano's intentions. They call it the volcano's confession. When magma rises from deep chambers toward the surface, dissolved gases escape first. The more sulfur dioxide pouring from the crater, the more fresh molten rock is actively degassing beneath. High readings mean a large magma supply feeding the eruption. Sustained high readings mean that supply isn't running out. On January 8th, instruments measured 195 tons per day, elevated but within expected parameters. 5 weeks later, the reading hit 5,503 tons per day, a 28-fold increase, the highest emission recorded at Mayon in 15 years. The last time this volcano released sulfur dioxide at comparable levels was 2011. That episode preceded an eruption, forcing evacuations that lasted months and caused widespread agricultural devastation across Albay province. Now here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. Those 2011 readings came during a different type of eruption. The current activity pattern, with its sustained high emissions, continuous effusion, and ongoing ground inflation, doesn't match any recent event in Mayon's history. Dr. Teresito Bacolcol, director of FIVOLCS, addressed the implications during his February briefings. Sustained emissions at this level indicate an open conduit system. The magma pathway from deep reservoir to crater remains unobstructed. Fresh material continues ascending without interruption. The mountain keeps confessing, and its confession keeps getting worse. In 1814, Mayon demonstrated what it's truly capable of. The eruption began with earthquakes on January 31st. By February 1st, the volcano was ejecting ash columns 50 kilometers into the stratosphere. Pyroclastic flows swept down the southern slopes at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour. The ashfall was so thick, it accumulated to depths of 10 to 12 meters along affected slopes. When the dust settled, approximately 1,200 people were dead. Some estimates put the toll closer to 2,000. The town of Kagsawa took the worst of it. Hundreds of residents sought refuge inside the stone church, believing its thick walls would protect them. The Franciscan friars had rebuilt that church in 1724 after Dutch pirates burned the original structure. They made it stronger, more durable. They thought it would last forever. They were wrong. The pyroclastic flows didn't just burn the church, they buried it. They buried everyone inside. Today, only the church belfry remains visible above ground, a stone finger pointing at the volcano that destroyed everything around it. Visitors to Kagsawa Ruins Park walk on top of what was once the church floor. The original structure remains entombed below their feet. That eruption is classified as Plinian, the most violent type of volcanic explosion. The same classification given to Mount Vesuvius when it buried Pompeii. The same classification given to Mount Pinatubo in 1991. Mayon has erupted 54 times since 1616. It averages one significant event roughly every 7 years. But the 1814 catastrophe holds a unique distinction. It remains the most lethal eruption in the volcano's recorded history. Here's what connects that disaster to today. The 1814 event produced massive lahars, volcanic mudflows created when rain mixed with fresh ash deposits. These flows traveled far beyond the immediate blast zone, burying communities that thought they were safely distant from the crater. Now, fast forward March 2026. The rainy season arrives in a few months. Accumulated debris from 59 days of continuous eruption will transform into lahar with the first heavy storms. Communities downstream face a threat that extends months beyond whenever this eruption finally ends. You might wonder why anyone lives within striking distance of a volcano that erupts every 7 years on average. The answer is brutal in its simplicity. The same volcanic activity that threatens death also sustains life. Mayon slopes produce some of the most fertile agricultural land in the Philippines. The volcanic soil yields crops that support entire communities. The tourism industry, built around the world's most perfect volcanic cone, employs thousands. Economic survival and physical survival occupy identical coordinates. The geography permits no compromise. Over 400,000 people live within 20 kilometers of Mayon's crater. The farmers cultivating those slopes can't simply relocate to safer ground, because safer ground doesn't produce the yields that feed their families. The tourism workers can't abandon jobs that don't exist anywhere else. Generations have built lives in the shadow of this mountain, fully aware of what it can do. They've rebuilt after 54 documented eruptions across 4 centuries. They'll rebuild again if given the chance. The resilience isn't ignorance of danger. It's clear-eyed acceptance that this mountain is home despite everything it threatens to take. But acceptance doesn't eliminate risk. And right now, the risk keeps escalating. So what happens to the people who can't leave, won't leave, or have nowhere else to go? The current displacement numbers tell their own story. As of late February, over 4,000 evacuees remain in shelters across Albay province. These are people who followed evacuation orders, left homes they may not see intact again, and now wait in crowded gymnasiums and temporary facilities for news that never seems to improve. The 6-kilometer permanent danger zone remains strictly enforced. Military checkpoints prevent unauthorized entry. Armed personnel patrol the perimeter around the clock. Anyone caught inside faces immediate removal. Extended danger zones have been established beyond the standard perimeter in areas where pyroclastic flows have traveled farthest. These additional restrictions acknowledge what Doreen Abelinda confirmed. The hazard patterns are no longer predictable. The old models don't account for filled gullies and redirected flows. Schools remain closed across affected municipalities. Over 47,000 students have had their education disrupted. Distance learning protocols exist on paper, but internet connectivity in rural evacuation shelters remains inconsistent. Agricultural losses continue mounting. Preliminary assessments exceed 180 million pesos in crop damage. Livestock evacuation operations have relocated thousands of cattle, carabao, and goats to temporary holding facilities. Farms go untended, harvests rot in fields that cannot be safely accessed. The Philippine government operates at full crisis mobilization. The Department of National Defense has deployed 2,400 military personnel. Emergency assistance from the Department of Social Welfare and Development has exceeded 89 million pesos since January 6th. The coordination structure connects 47 local government units in a communication network operating around the clock. But coordination cannot control what the mountain decides to do next. 5volx models 3 possible trajectories for how this eruption ends. The first scenario offers cautious hope. Sulfur dioxide emissions gradually decline. The lava dome stabilizes through slow extrusion rather than catastrophic collapse. Activity decreases to levels permitting phased return of evacuees. This pattern would mirror the 2023 eruption that maintained alert level 3 for 6 months before eventual de-escalation. The second scenario extends the crisis indefinitely. Current activity persists for 6 months or longer. Emissions remain elevated. The dome continues growing without catastrophic failure. Evacuees face displacement measured in seasons rather than weeks. Economic devastation compounds, but widespread casualties are avoided through sustained evacuation enforcement. The third scenario represents the nightmare: complete dome collapse in a single catastrophic event. Pyroclastic density currents exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius race down Mayon slopes, at speeds surpassing 100 kilometers per hour. Anyone within the danger zone dies instantly. Warning time could be minutes, or 0. The approaching rainy season introduces additional variables. Accumulated volcanic debris transforms into lahars when monsoon rains arrive. These mudflows follow river channels downstream at tremendous velocity, threatening communities far beyond the permanent danger zone. Lahar risk persists for years after initial eruption activity subsides. Scientists at 5volx monitor every tremor, every millimeter of ground movement, every ton of sulfur dioxide escaping the crater. The surveillance never sleeps. But surveillance cannot predict the precise moment when accumulated pressure exceeds structural limits. The volcano keeps its own schedule. 59 days into this eruption, none of the critical indicators show signs of declining. Lava effusion continues from the summit crater. Ground deformation measurements confirm the edifice keeps inflating, particularly on the eastern and southeastern sectors. The magma supply feeding this activity shows no indication of exhaustion. If anything, the deep reservoir appears more active now than it was 6 weeks ago. The gullies are full, the hazard maps are obsolete. The flows are carving new paths, and the volcano keeps pushing fresh material to the surface without pause. Above the northeastern Philippines, the world's most perfectly shaped volcano glows red against the darkness each night. The incandescent dome pulses with heat visible from 30 kilometers away. Residents in surrounding communities can smell sulfur drifting from the crater. Children in evacuation shelters draw pictures of the mountain they can see from gymnasium windows. The same silhouette that draws tourists from around the world now serves as a warning beacon for the hundreds of thousands who live in its shadow. Beautiful, deadly, patient. When will Mayon's current activity peak? Will the dome collapse gradually or catastrophically? Will the approaching rainy season trigger lahars that travel far beyond current danger zones? Will there be warning before the worst-case scenario unfolds? Nobody knows. The eruption continues. The questions it raises have no answers yet. And the people of Albay wait for a mountain that keeps its own time. If you're in the affected area, follow official evacuation orders from 5 Volks and local authorities. Stay outside the 6-kilometer permanent danger zone. The situation remains serious with Alert Level 3 in effect. Scientists continue monitoring with sophisticated equipment. Emergency response networks are activated and sustained. The best protection is staying informed and following official guidance.